Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Fuel Fumes podcast, where I am your host, Spencer, and I got
Mac right beside him. I'm the other host, and we are here with another banging episode. We just had on IndyCar and Formula One driver Derek Daly. He is a legend of the sport. He raced all throughout the 70s and 80s and a little bit into the 90s, but he has a collection of these amazing stories that he tells so perfectly and well. It almost makes you feel like you are in the car with him.
That's a great way to put it. I was happy we could pull out some iconic Formula One stories, specifically around James Hunt, who is one of our favorite, and we could almost say one of the spirit animals of the podcast here at Fuel.
Him and Bettenhausen are like the two pillars that this podcast rests on. That's who's in the logo.
Yes.
Just kidding.
Yes. No, it was an incredible interview. We had such a good time. We could have talked to him for forever.
Years.
And hey, listen, he said he'd come back. So
let's go. Let's get him back. He is just an absolute legend. We got stories about Monaco, about racing against legends like Keke Rosberg, Elio De Angelis, Patrese, Hunt,
Niki Lauda,
Scheckter, Villeneuve, Fittipaldi, Peterson, Andretti. The list goes on and on. But you know what? I think I'm going to save it because you guys can listen to it in a couple of seconds.
The other thing I have is, for you guys that don't know, this is actually Connor Daly's dad, who races IndyCar. Not currently, but he did race IndyCar for almost 9 years probably.
Yeah, quite a long time.
Which I think he's run the 500 this year. I think he's coming back. So
I think you're right. I think you are right.
So other than that, I don't got much. I would just like to let the fans listen to Mr. Daly. And guys, Mac, you had anything else?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for listening to this episode. Be sure to go ahead and like, subscribe, and follow us on all social media platforms and wherever you get your audio from. And that is all from me, Spence. So shall we pass them over to Mr. Derek Daly?
Enjoy, Mr. Derek Daly. All right. So today on the podcast, we have a very special guest, a guest I've wanted since the day I met you during Indianapolis, the 500 this year. This racing driver won the 1977 British Formula One Championship and competed as a professional racing driver for 17 years, participating in 64 World Championship Formula One Grand Prix from 1978 to 1982. He scored a total championship points of 15, making him Ireland's most successful F1 driver. Welcome to the Fuel and Fumes podcast, Mr. Derek Daly. How are we doing?
Can I just make one slight correction?
Absolutely.
Mac, do you know what he said wrong?
Yeah. Spence, you may have...
What I say? What did I say?
On the British Formula One, or you said Formula One, but it was the British Formula 3, 1977.
I've had Formula One on my mind all day.
Yeah. And I was going to stop you, but I said, nah, just let him roll.
Yeah.
Let my marketing agent,
Let him make the error. Yes, we've had Formula One on our mind all day, doing a deep dive on you. So we thought Formula One, but it's Formula 3. But on that note, how are you doing, Mr. Derek?
Great. I am in Phoenix, Arizona. There's not many better places in America right now. Weather is beautiful. Summertime, it's a bit toasty, but I can slip back to Indianapolis during the summertime.
Do you try to get out to the 500 every year, I'm assuming?
Every year.
Since
1983.
Wow.
1983. Wow, incredible. We'll get into the Indy talk soon, but of course we want to first get into the start of your racing career and into Formula One, then into kart. So we first want to just express our gratitude on the podcast because you are our first ex-Formula One driver we've had in the Formula One sphere. So we feel very grateful for you having us on.
Good.
And we're really excited for all our fans to kind of hear the firsthand accounts about racing. And you were arguably one of the greatest eras of all time. So we are very excited to hear your story and get right into it.
Well, good. Yeah, it amazes me that it's so long ago now because it's so vivid and so clear. A lot of the things that went on, and it was just, even when I look back on video from the era of mid-70s, 75, 76, 70, 78, the cars had suspension. They had the great big air boxes. They had every design was so totally different. It was just, I do think it was a golden era of Formula One.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
No doubt whatsoever. And it was one of our favorite. And I think that not we missed out on it, but I think I'm a big hockey fan too. I think I missed out on the golden era of sports. But
Yeah.
we can sit back and we can reminisce and go through the Formula One archive and sift our way through all the great races. So
1978, Montreal. It was -1 degree on race day, but that weekend, there were a group of Formula One drivers invited to a ice hockey game. So I went off, had never seen one. We were up in a skybox, and some fella with us said, keep an eye on that. We've got a rookie guy over there. Yeah, we think he's going to be really good. And we said, what's his name? He said, Gretzky, Wayne Gretzky. He's just a rookie, but we think he's probably going to be pretty good. Yeah. 1978. Was it the Oilers, Edmonton?
Yeah, it was the Edmonton Oilers. Yes.
Was it? Yeah.
Yes.
That was my one and only hockey game.
Wow.
My other claim to fame on hockey is my niece played field hockey in the Olympics, just gone. Wow. And won a World Cup silver medal. So we have a bit of a hockey connection in the Daly family.
You're practically Canadian.
Yeah, man.
Practically. Nah. That's awesome. The Gretzky score is cool because recently after he won a cup, not once but 4 times. So it's very cool to kind of see the intertwine of that. So first off, getting right into racing. How exactly did you get into racing? We found an article saying that your dad kind of got you into racing by attending local events, of course, in Ireland where you grew up, and later competing in stock car. Is that exactly true? And how did your passion come about?
Yeah, my dad sold vegetables out of a corner grocery store, and I got out of school when I was 12 years of age. I was walking home, typical short pants, leather school bag on your back, walking through our neighborhood. I see a big green truck registered from England. I thought, well, that's a bit unusual. And on the side of it was Sydney Taylor Racing. And I thought, wow, that's probably a racing car. Go to my dad, all excited. There's a truck, a green truck. Probably a racing car. He said, yeah, the lady who buys her groceries here, she said, you can see the racing car at 7 p.m. that night. We went back, they opened the door, and here was this white Brabham BT8 sports car with a green stripe down the middle and an Irish shamrock. And my dad said, I'll take you to see it race tomorrow. Tomorrow was going to be in a small village called Dunboyne, literally village roads around a typical Irish village, and a typical Irish village is like a grocery store, a church, and 7 or 8 pubs. And so by the time you made the trek to all the pubs, you probably went around 3.5 miles of a road course. And he took me out, and we literally sat on the grass banks. There was no safety fences back in those days. You could sit right on the grass bank and the cars whizzing by. And I watched Sydney Taylor, and I was amazed. And that was the day that I can remember it so clearly, like in HD video, that I remember the color and the noise and the smell. And I told my dad, I'm going to be a professional race car driver. That's what I'm going to do right there. And I mean, I was naive then, because you can't just do that. But that's what I was going to do. I told him right there and then.
That was the spark.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And there's so many great stories, because in the race that day was a guy called Mo Nunn. Mo Nunn created the Ensign Formula One team. The Ensign Formula One team was the team that I happened to make my Grand Prix debut with in 1978, which is only 13, was it 13 years later? Yeah. That's amazing.
Crazy. Yeah, that's wild.
It's such an interesting early story. So Sydney Taylor's sister bought her groceries in our neighborhood from my dad. It was Sydney Taylor I went to see race that day. That was 1965. I was 12. In 1977, you mentioned the British Formula 3 Championship earlier. We are in Austria. There's a Formula 3 support race. I'm on the pole beside Nelson Piquet. We're on the pre-grid. And this old guy with a limp shuffled up to my mentor at the time, my sponsor, who owned my Formula 3 car. And he whispered something in his ear, and then he shuffled and limped off across the paddock. And my sponsor, Derek McMahon from Donegal, comes over to me and says, that fella there said, if you win this race, he'll put you in a Formula 1 car by the end of the year. I said, who was it? He said, some fella called Sidney Taylor. Can you imagine? Sidney Taylor at that time managed Teddy Yip's Formula 1 involvement. They had just finished building the Theodore Formula 1 car. And Sidney Taylor came to me and said, are you in this race? You'll be the first one in the car testing it. Isn't that amazing how the whole cycle came all the way around to when I was 12 years of age to the first Formula 1 car that I ever tested?
It's incredible at that point, because I guess Nelson would then go on to be a future world champion at that time, correct?
Yes. Yeah. We were good friends, raced across Europe, raced in England together. And when I made my Grand Prix debut with Team Ensign in 78 at Brands Hatch in England, it all went really well. And they wanted me to sign a 3-year contract. I didn't want to do it. So they said, well, you're not racing in Germany. They put Nelson Piquet in. Nelson Piquet did well, went on to Brabham. Because he did well, I thought, gee, I better get back here. So I said, okay, I'll do the rest of the year. And it all went well. And I scored my first point in Montreal in the last race of the season.
Yeah, I had that in the note because that, of course, is our home Grand Prix. So I thought that was very cool.
Yeah.
A little nugget there for everyone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Mac.
So I guess with all of that, I mean, you've raced along many insane names, but did you have any racing heroes growing up?
I would say the two people that impressed me most of all was Jackie Stewart and James Hunt. Now, remember, I raced with James Hunt, but he was a megastar hero when I was in Formula Ford and Formula 3. And to think that I went through the junior series so fast to race with James Hunt, it even blows my mind today when you think about some of the things that happened. So 1976, I moved to England because Canada still has Formula Ford 1600 today, which I think is one of the great training grounds in motor racing. But in England, it was Formula Ford back in the 70s. Everybody had to go there. Emerson Fittipaldi went there, James Hunt. Everybody went through Formula Ford. And so at Brands Hatch, they had the very first ever Formula Ford festival. It still goes on today, every year, end of the year. 120, 30, 50, whatever it was, Formula Ford guys descend on Brands Hatch and you go race. Well, that year, 76, was the year James Hunt won the World Championship. So Marlboro sponsored it. Marlboro were sponsoring James Hunt. So they called it the Tribute to James Formula Ford Festival. Well, I win it. I'm up on the podium. James Hunt gives me the trophy. We shake hands. He says hello. I say hello. Less than a year and a half later, I was on the Formula 1 grid at Brands Hatch right beside him. Qualified, just 2 places lower than him. So we, and I said to him, I said, hey, do you remember Formula Ford? And we were good friends from then on. And then when I went into television broadcasting, he was doing the same thing for BBC. So we traveled the world and saw each other for years afterwards. Yeah.
Was he always a ladies' man? Was it always a unanimous thing?
Wildest thing you ever saw. I couldn't. I'd blush today if I told you half the stuff that I heard. I heard him shout stuff across restaurants at his girlfriend that you couldn't even say on a podcast.
Do you have one recognizable James Hunt story that you could maybe divulge on the podcast that you could maybe stir up?
I couldn't, because it involved the physical activities he wanted to do with his girlfriend Hottie. But instead of just keeping it private with her, he shouted across the restaurant in South Africa when she arrived there too late, and in his perfect English accent, which didn't make it sound quite so crass. He'd shout across it, everybody listening, "Oh, Hottie, darling, I want to do you before dinner." And we all cringed, and oh my, and that just, some people just looked at each other and says, "Hey, that's James Hunt for you."
The superstar and legend.
Yeah. We're good.
So back to 1977, you moved through British Formula 3 into European Formula 3 and then into European F2, collecting 5 wins across 27 races against massive names like Keke Rosberg, Elio De Angelis, Didier Pironi, Riccardo Patrese, and Stefan Johansson, to name some. So I guess at what point did it click that you were going to make it to Formula One and these guys were going to be, your teammates and like competition?
It's interesting to hear those names, because I mean the group that raced in my era in the junior formula that all made it to Formula One was just remarkable. And I couldn't, although I told my dad I wanted to be a professional race car driver, I couldn't tell you that I really believed I was going to be a Formula One driver, because they just seemed to be on a different level. I mean, a different planet. It just a different level completely. But I did vow to myself that what I would do is give myself every opportunity to go as far as I could, whatever that took. And I mean, there's a lot of selfish things that you have to do. You have to be selfish. You have to be brutally focused to the detriment of, friends and family at times. But sometimes you have to do that because you might only get one chance on the big stage. And I was prepared to do whatever I could. And it all happened so unbelievably fast for me. Just unbelievably fast.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that point you make specifically about dedication is something that we enjoy in terms of the story of Nico Rosberg, specifically how his just utter dedication of, telling his wife and his kids, basically, I want to win this world championship and I will do anything to do that. And just putting yourself in the position and everything in terms of dedication to be the best is definitely something I don't think people understand in terms of Formula One drivers or anything of sport craft, that you need to be everything.
I don't think people can understand, grasp, and appreciate what it takes to stretch yourself physically and emotionally right to the edge. I happen to follow Nico Rosberg's career quite closely, obviously because his dad and I were teammates when his dad became world champion. And I can remember reading that when he worked out, he made sure that his calf muscles did not become too large, because the extra weight he would have to carry could be potentially detrimental during some of the races. And then he worked out that if he changed his helmet color scheme and just used black as a base coat, he could get his helmet a couple of grams lighter than normal. And these are the nth degrees these guys were thinking about off track. I remember reading about Jensen Button, who was taking some sort of a natural supplement to help his eyes readjust to the light when he exited the tunnel in Monaco in preparation for the braking zone for the harbor chicane. I mean, just stunning stuff that these athletes went to just to try and get 100th of a second, 200ths of a second, maybe. Just amazing. It really just it's amazing even today to me that I follow it fairly closely, and I'm still gobsmacked just the lengths these people go to be the absolute best they can possibly be.
Yeah, no, and the pursuit for greatness there is it's amazing how every single thing has really been thought out, and they stop at no lengths to just file it down and get as many tents out of the car as they possibly can. Like, I mean, you hear stories all the time about people, I mean, dropping weight off of the liveries by like just changing the colors. And so, yeah, no, it's really quite amazing just to see how all of these things come together and like what it actually takes to kind of get that championship mentality, I guess.
And when I went to the Indy 500 for the first time, and you see a team like Team Penske, and when I went to the television broadcasting, I could get behind the scenes and ask the questions that drivers couldn't be bothered asking because they're too busy doing other things. But when you get to the technical side of, let's say, a race like the Indy 500, do you know that the decal material is too thick to put on a racing car? So all the decals the car's painted, all the decals are put on, and then the clear coat goes on every part of the car as the last thing, so the decal material is perfectly smooth all the way down, so as it doesn't cause tiny vortices that causes drag. I mean, just amazing. And over 2.5 miles, they're hoping to get 3 or 4 hundredths of a second of speed. It's just amazing.
Mind-blowing.
Just amazing.
I think that the room for error for sure, I think, is almost villainized at times. We have Max Verstappen now, who is almost painted as a villain specifically in Drive to Survive, but just on the grid too. But I think that just kind of doesn't show his ultra dominance and focus in the sport. I think it's more villainized than it is, respected and cherished.
Yeah, and he's got that cold focus, that abruptness to him. But hey, if I had a Formula One team or any racing team, he'd be the first guy I'd try and hire, because he truly does have maybe the greatest feel from a human being driving a racing car than we've ever seen. Quite possibly better than Senna or Prost or Schumacher or Hamilton. He might be better than every one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very excited, and I really do hope he stays in the sport. Again, there's rumors coming out, of course, speculations, and it's just hearsay, but talking about how he may not want to, break all the records if he has the possibility to. But I would love nothing more than him to just shatter everything, just to do what people don't think that anyone else could do. It would be astonishing to see that.
And some people think, oh, it's boring. He does all this stuff. It's like saying baseball's boring. It is until you understand it.
Yeah,
exactly.
When you truly understand what it takes to run at the level these teams and people operate, that to me is what makes it fascinating, day in, day out.
I think that's what we appreciate most about Formula One, is there's so many different aspects you can see about the sport that you can enjoy, from the media standpoint, from the racing itself, from the the engineering. There's so many different things that you can focus on in racing that you can enjoy as a fan.
Yeah, I just wish we had V10 engines back.
Yeah, bring them back.
I was having dinner not that long ago, and they were saying, "Do you need earplugs for the races?" And I go, "Formula One's not loud." I said, "IndyCar's not loud." I said, "NASCAR is quite raspy, so I wear the earplugs, but every other car is like, you're pretty much okay to stand out there and listen to the cars go by."
Yeah, it sounds like a vacuum when it's
There's a reason why we don't watch Formula E.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm a bit old school. The noise when it pops up on social media, and and things going flying by, it's just it still causes people to smile.
Yeah, absolutely. So our next question, of course, when you entered Formula One in 1978, the class of drivers you were met with were absolute legends. Of course, as you were saying, you had Mario Andretti, who went on to win the 1978 Formula One season, Ronnie Peterson, Niki Lauda, Jody Scheckter, Gilles Villeneuve, Emerson Fittipaldi, and more. Were there nerves when you first entered that season, seeing the drivers that you were about to head up against, or was it just business as usual?
No, I was nervous. I can remember being on the grid in 1979 in the Ensign, last on the grid, no car behind me. And I was having to talk myself into deep breathing because I was about to puke. Just the adrenaline, just the nerves, just trepidation. What might happen? How might it happen? I mean, they're big moments. You have to talk yourself down sometimes, but I can remember James Hunt puked in his helmet at Paul Ricard in 1977, I think it was. because I would be afraid to tell anybody that I felt like puking until I let it out one day. And then James Hunt told me, oh, no, I did that. Yeah. Yeah. The bit he didn't tell me he was drunk the night before. That's why he puked.
Oh,
yeah, that makes the most sense for sure. Yeah, it's got to be difficult. I don't think a normal person would be ever in a situation like that and be able to calm yourself down. You just have to do everything in your mind to play the mental game of just doing what you've been doing all these years.
And it's physically so difficult. When I was in F1, we didn't have any trainers or specialized guys or specialized diets like you do now. But I remember in 1983 at the Long Beach Grand Prix, which was IndyCar at the time, I did a physical heart monitoring by the Hovig Medical Group out of San Diego, where they monitored my heartbeat for the course of 2 hours of the race. At the end of it, when they gathered all the data, they believed their equipment somehow had malfunctioned, because I averaged for 2 hours 178 beats per minute. I had a high of 199. And at that stage, they had never measured sustained heartbeats that high. Since then, professional cyclists have heartbeats as high as racing drivers. So just think about those type of physical exertions and then trying to stay focused and be mistake-free. And you see the challenges that racing drivers face. And very few people understand what that strain and stress on the body physically and mentally is like.
And that's not a part of like a pre-existing medical condition? This is just kind of like something that you've kind of been accustomed to, and like, maybe a natural disposition to, like, that's amazing.
That's what every drivers do. Yeah. Since then, I mean, I see my son Connor's trace regularly. He's regularly up in above 180 beats per minute. Wow. Yeah. Wow. It's savage stuff. So if you go into a sauna, right? A lot of people use sauna still for workout. If you go in, there'll be a little sign. It'll say, stay in for 20 minutes. If you stay in for 20 more minutes and you feel the temples begin to pump on the side of your head, take your pulse, and it might be around 140. Maybe. Now, think about taking your bicycle in there and riding your bike and getting it up to 175 average for nearly 2 hours. That's tough stuff right there.
I'm curious. I'm assuming, I know diet's a huge thing now with all professional sports. I'm assuming, was a diet anything at that time, or was it just beer and, doing whatnot?
I never drank when I raced. I tried to eat good, fresh vegetables, fruits, a pretty good diet, but I had nowhere near the strength that I needed. I perspired an incredible amount. All the stitching in my suits would be covered in white sodium at the end of races. Frank Williams got an air pipe put into me at Las Vegas at the end of the year because it said he sweats so much he might die in the car if we don't try and cool him down. And this was all pre-cool suits. And then cool suits and cool hats began to come out. Then they were all ditched because they weighed too much. But then the biggest thing that helped drivers is power steering came in. Because before power steering, the fight you had with the front wheels of the car was just sap all your strength and all your energy. But as soon as I put power steering in, suddenly all drivers would get out and feeling good. Except last year, where was it? Qatar? Was it Qatar?
Yeah, Qatar.
Last year, Logan Sargent collapsed and half the field felt like.
Yeah, a couple drivers threw up as well.
Yeah.
I think too, we saw Nick DeBris in his Formula One debut. He was used to driving Formula E, and specifically the physical strength that he had to be pulled out of the car because there was so much lactic acid in his arms.
That's right.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, the physical endurance, I don't think people definitely don't understand in terms of my girlfriend's mom specifically thinks she can drive a Formula One car, and I tell her every time. I'm like, I don't. Yeah, exactly.
Not happening.
Not happening. No.
So I guess moving along here. So your first appearance was in 1978 at which came at the iconic Silverstone in a non-championship international trophy race. In an impressive performance in the rain, where you weaved yourself in front of 1976 champion James Hunt. But unfortunately, your visor broke and you ended up losing control, ending up in the fencing. Did you enjoy driving in the rain, or were you just so focused that the weather conditions didn't really matter?
I had a history of good results in the rain. And so I couldn't say I enjoyed driving in the rain,
Right.
but maybe I didn't dislike it as much as most people.
Right.
But I had a history from Formula Ford, the Formula Ford Festival that I won at Brands Hatch. It pissed rain all day long, and I won my heat, my quarterfinal, semifinal, and final. Formula 3, the same, won in the rain. F2, F1, always flew in the rain. Yeah.
What was it a lot different? I'm assuming nowadays in terms of driving from the wet, driving then. Did you just felt comfortable in the rain? Like you said, you always qualified and finished well. Was it just the overall conditions that you felt well, or that was just pure coincidence?
No, I just think you have to go into instinct reflex mode. And I think I was prepared to go there, maybe more so than a lot of drivers. And there were some drivers like that. Hans Stuck was like that. He was remarkably good in the rain also. But in Austria, my second or third Grand Prix in Austria, it rained. And I whistled past Mario, Ronnie Peterson, James Hunt again in the early laps in the rain, and was running fourth with like 4 laps to go when I just slipped off the dry line that had formed, slipped off, spun, and ended up in the middle of a cornfield. And there's a famous photo of me with my hands in the air looking for the marshal to push me out of the cornfield, trying to salvage something. Yeah, but another great wet race, and I think I just didn't dislike it as much as most people.
So on to the next question. So you collected your first Formula 1 points, as you said, at our home race in Canada, where you ended up finishing 6th. What was your emotions finally collecting some points in Formula 1 during your first season, and how high were your spirits being able to collect points on the final race of the season?
Yeah, the bit I didn't really grasp was that Mo Nunn, my team owner, was about to go out of business if I didn't score a point, because 1 point kept him in the constructors, the Formula 1 constructors, which allowed all travel to all the races to be paid for by Formula 1. And so that 1 point at the end completely transformed the next couple of years for him. And I did not realize. He never mentioned it to me. He didn't say to me, if you can do this, this will be great. Nothing. But when I stepped out of the car, he grabbed me by the legs and put me up in the air like this in celebration. And it was only then I began to realize the magnitude and the millions that he became available to this small team, purely because they were now officially in FOCA, they call it, Formula 1 Constructors Association. And all travel got paid for, which is remarkable.
Thank goodness
Yeah.
he didn't tell you before, because if I was told before, there'd be a lot of there's a lot. That's a monkey on your back.
And that was only 6 races into my career. And remember, it was only the top 6 got points, not the top 10.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because I was looking at you had a top 10 and a top 8, or I believe one of the two, but they didn't collect points at the time. And I was surprised when I looked at the Formula 1 standings. Yeah, no point collection, just the top 6 as you
Only
suggested.
top 6. Yeah.
All right. So I guess let's talk about Monaco for a second. This is a track that haunts many drivers as they do all that they can and still find themselves unlucky. And so this is where you had a rather iconic crash in your Tyrrell, where you vaulted over a couple of cars in a rather large pileup. And then 2 years later, you found yourself leading the late race with 2 laps left. And your gearbox, unfortunately, failed, bringing you home in 6th place. As a driver, I guess, how do you come to terms with this? And is Monaco still kind of the one that got away, or?
Yes. So 1980, the weird thing about that in the Candy Tyrrell, I remember every millisecond of it as if it was happening in a slow motion this afternoon. I know exactly what happened, my thought pattern, how it unfolded. I saw leaves flutter in front of me in slow motion at the start. The engines are screaming, you're grabbing gears. Before I ever hit Giacomelli, I saw him stop. I realized I'm not going to be able to stop. I'm probably going to hit him. I'll probably break the wing. No big deal. I'll drive straight to the pits. There's a spare one there because I saw it. They'll fit it. I'll go back out again, and I'll be on my way. No big deal. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
But when I hit him, he was obviously braking for the corner. I hit him. There were the days when we had the big fat rear tires. When I hit him, instead of just bouncing back off his tire rotated my front of my car up in the air. So as his tire rotated, my car jumped up, landed on his rear wheel, and it was rotating. So it was like a conveyor belt that just brought my car up, 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 up until it stood on its nose, and then it fell over. And I actually thought it was going to land on the roll bar. I actually remember looking at the pavements. I saw the pebbles on the ground in perfect focus because I'm preparing myself to try and get my head down in case it landed on its roll bar and the roll bar broke. Well, instead of landing forward on the roll bar, it fell sideways. And Alain Prost had just arrived in the McLaren. And so it fell sideways on top of his rear wheel. And so from a conveyor belt, I went into a trampoline. It went boing like a trampoline, and it sent me in another half cartwheel. And I came out of the sky and landed on the front wheel of my teammate's car, Jean-Pierre Jarier. And again, it landed on top of his, so it went boing again like a trampoline. So I went cartwheel, trampoline, went from 12th to 5th, but I had no wheels left on the car.
Yeah.
And so here's the funny thing. So I jumped out of the car, and I'm walking back across the guardrail, and Jarier, my teammate, had already grabbed Bruno Giacomelli by the scruff of the neck, and he's ripping strips off him, blaming him for the accident. And I thought for a second, "Ooh, I might get away with this." And then I thought, you know what? I'm pretty sure there's slow-mo cameras that cut everything that happened. Anyway, Ken Tyrrell wouldn't speak to me for the next 2 weeks, which is okay. And then 2 years later, of course, in the Williams, the only reason I didn't win Monaco was because in the very first practice session, I was P1 at the time and my engine blew. And the spare car was sitting right there, and they wouldn't let me use it because it was set up for Keke. They went and got a fourth car, rolled it up. I got into it. By the time the end of the session came, the car was never as quick. I didn't like it, never as comfortable. Qualified 12th. I could have been much further up. I got caught behind Nigel Mansell early in the race. Took me more than half the race to get by him. And by the time, and then it rained, and I began to fly in the rain. And then towards the end, I am the fastest car on the racetrack. I catch Keke Rosberg. I see him hit the curbing on the seafront chicane, the harbor chicane. I saw him hit the curb. I saw his front suspension break. I saw his wheel begin to wave in the air because it's now their pull rod's broken. And that was another one I passed. And I was actually going probably too hard. I came into the Tabac corner, long left-hander. Car got sideways. I held it, didn't spin, but the rear wing hit the guardrail and straightened me up perfectly. Never missed a beat, didn't miss a position, but the rear wing hit the guardrail, straightened me up, and away I went. The problem was the rear wing fell off, and the oil cooler for the gearbox was attached to the rear wing. So now Pironi's running out of fuel. De Cesaris is running out of fuel. Who else? There was somebody else ran out of fuel. They're all stopping. Patrese spins. He's leading. I passed Patrese, but I only had 2 laps to go. I'm about to start my last lap, going around Rascas to start the last lap. The gearbox is making noise because all the oil's out on the road. And I'm actually leading the race. about to go around. Rask has to start the last lap when the gearbox broke.
Oh my goodness.
And that was all he wrote.
That
And there's a great shot of me, you know, the car slows down. I step out of the car and I just literally don't even look at anything, just walk away. Little that I know, that will be the last time I would race in Monaco in Formula One or in anything.
Yeah.
That's a hard one to go away, because that's one of the most iconic, especially Formula One.
Yeah.
That's definitely the most iconic one.
And to be that close.
Yeah. And Prixs spun on my oil. He had no idea why he spun. He had no idea for the next 30 years why he spun in Monaco. I happened to do an interview with a magazine, told the whole story. Prixs reads about it in Italy and sends me an email. Finally, you told the truth. I said, no, finally somebody asked me the question.
You were playing Mario Kart back in the day before Mario Kart even came out.
So we were together at the Senna's 25th anniversary, because I was doing the television broadcast when Senna got killed. I was doing the live broadcast. So for the 25th anniversary, myself and Barbara went back to Imola to be part of the celebration, and Riccardo Prixs was there. So we laughed about all those years later.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So I guess in 1982 was your last season driving in F1, where you raced in Williams alongside Keke Rosberg in his championship winning year. So a lot of people in your last race was the infamous Caesar's Palace Grand Prix, which was notoriously hot, with temps reaching nearly 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and an overall poor racetrack that a lot of people still scratch their heads about. Which a lot of people won't know, that this was the title decider for your teammate Keke Rosberg, who needed a 6 or better to finish to ultimately win the championship. And so he finished 5th and you finished in 6th. So can you tell us about this race and what role did you play in securing that win for him?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Ran our own races. He had a lightweight qualifying car, so he qualified up the front. The race was brutal, hot, brutal. First time ever, one and only time ever, I actually got dizzy in the car with about 2 or 3 laps to go. In the brake zones, they were so bumpy. I actually felt my head just getting lightheaded and dizzy, very much like I'm sure they had at Qatar last year. And I realized I'm in trouble here. Managed to finish the race. I mean, adrenaline takes over, even though you're in difficulties. But brutal is probably the only word. Just brutal.
Really? Wow.
And the funny thing is, we all stayed in Caesar's Palace, so you could get dressed in your overalls, in your fireproofs before you went down for breakfast. We'd get dressed, go down for breakfast. Nobody even paid any attention to us. Nobody had any idea. Thought we were going to some fancy dress Halloween party. No idea the race was even going on. So it was pretty weird to walk straight from the hotel, have breakfast, and go walk straight to the paddock.
Wow. And considering now, like, drivers are pretty well transported, like in underground tunnels and away from the public. And like, I mean, I'm sure if you went to Las Vegas during the past Grand Prix, there wouldn't have been a soul there who didn't know that they were racing. Right. You know? That's wild.
That's incredible. Just going down, and like you said, probably people thought you guys were in your pajamas and you were just ready to hop on the racetrack and grab some breakfast.
I mean, it's Vegas. It's probably not even the weirdest thing they saw all day. So
probably not. So of course, in 1982, that would be your last season in Formula One, where you'd end up actually transferring to kart that same year. So you raced the 1982 Phoenix the second time they raced Phoenix, and that's the oval, correct?
Yeah.
So how did this transfer from kart specifically happen, and how different was racing the ovals integrated into your calendar from racing Formula One right into IndyCar, specifically kart?
Yeah. So my manager at the time, Ted Quackenbush, great guy, called me out of the blue 2 weeks after Vegas and says, would you like to do the last IndyCar race of the season? I said, where is it? Phoenix. I said, where's that? And they said it's an oval track. What's that? I'd never seen an IndyCar, never saw a race, no idea where Phoenix was, never saw an oval track. So I said, sure, yeah, let's go. Went to Phoenix. it was probably the worst prepared car I'd been in ever in my career. John Paul Jr. had raced it the last time it was on track, hit a curb at, I believe it was Road America, punched to the bottom of the monocoque up, which bent the pedal cluster. And when I went in for a seat fitting, I put my foot on the throttle, and of course the throttle stayed wide open. Nobody ever thought to fix the damage or look underneath, or I thought, yeah, okay,
Here we go.
I'll do it, and let's, I get to know some people. I qualified 9th, right beside Johnny Rutherford, who was a hero of mine at the time. I knew he'd won the Indy 500 3 times.
And you had never raced an oval at this point, correct?
No, never saw an oval. Yeah, qualified 9th, which was pretty damn good.
Yeah,
that's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And the engine blew up coming out of the first corner on the first lap.
No, it didn't.
No way.
It did.
Oh.
Now, this was the Weissard Racing. Weissard Racing was the name of the team. Herb and Rose Weissard were the 2 owners. The last race I did with them, which was Milwaukee the following year, the engine blew up warming it up, right? And so I came back after lunch. An engine builder had the engine out of the car. He had laid down garbage bags in the back of a pickup truck, and he actually was dismantling a Cosworth DFX engine in the middle of a dirty paddock in Milwaukee. And I'm thinking, no wonder these things blow up. This is, hospital environment stuff when they build them in England, and you're doing it in the back of a dirty pickup truck on a couple of plastic garbage bags. So that was the end of my career with Weissard. Then I met Tony Bettenhausen, signed with Bettenhausen Racing, and that was and then onto Raynor with a lot of interesting stuff in the middle.
Yeah, it's actually very cool. You mentioned Bettenhausen. We actually have Gary's helmet right here. He's actually one of our favorites, specifically on the podcast. We actually have him on the back of our T-shirt, the one of him smoking a cigarette. I believe it's the 1993 Indy 500. I actually have the T-shirt right here.
Oh, convenient.
Okay, convenient. Yeah, it's actually this one right here.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
There he is.
We'll get you a T-shirt. I'll send one down because after that you must have one now. But he's actually the Bettenhausen, definitely one of our favorite for sure here on the podcast. We call them the spirit animals here.
Yeah. Sorry, Spencer, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You got it.
All right. So you end up racing in 4 Indy 500s from 1982 to 1989. So I guess how is the atmosphere different at the 500 compared to like an F1 race, or is there anything really noticeable that you picked up on?
First time I ever qualified in Indy, 1983. Never had I seen 150,000 people turn up just to see people one lap at a time going fast. It was unbelievable. Never saw anything like the snake pit and the celebrations. Never saw
like it.
Yeah. Never saw anything like pre-race ceremonies at Indy. I mean, it was just remarkable. Even today, I stand out on the grid just to absorb the pre-race ceremonies today, and I still get goosebumps. It's just such a magical event. It truly is.
Yeah, I'm surprised they haven't done like a true authentic documentary on it yet, because Netflix comes out with documentaries all the time, and Indy is one. I'm surprised it gets away every time because it is such a massive event, and it's just there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it.
Nothing. Yeah. No. Yeah. And people say, oh, you only go around 4 left-hand corners. How difficult could that be? People have no idea what it takes to run these cars on the ragged edge in all of these corners above 230 miles an hour average speed. It's just, it's remarkable.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. So I guess since hanging up your helmet in 1991, you've stayed close to the world of motorsports. You've ran a performance driving school, worked as a commentator and an analyst. And as well as going into public speaking, and most importantly, a father. So what is life like after motorsports, and what was it like passing the motorsports torch to your son?
Easy. I never missed racing for a day after I stopped.
Really?
But I think I was already in television broadcasting, so
Right.
I didn't have a void. I was well entrenched in television broadcasting when I stopped, so I immediately went into full time, and I would feel the adrenaline rush, heartbeat of a live broadcast. It was almost like I was in the car. And so I really, really enjoyed doing it. And that filled the void for me completely. And I got hurt quite badly in '84. And when I walked away, I never wanted to put myself back in a position where I may get hurt again, if I'm being completely honest.
I mean, you've spent your entire career up to that point, taking your life in your hands every weekend and trusting yourself going, as fast as you possibly can. So, that makes complete sense. And, once
you feel invincible, invincible until you're not, until you're hurt.
Yeah. And once you're that close, you never want to be again. And I think that's what a lot of people don't get with, people like Romain Grosjean, who, walked out of a fireball and then, step back into racing, which I think is quite understated. But
it was interesting specifically in terms of your era, because it was definitely one of the scariest eras that you had driven in, specifically some incredible deaths like Gilles Villeneuve, some incredible people, not coming out of the sport. And I understand why, the transfer must have been quite easy of, feeling like your hands were almost clean.
Yeah. I mean, F1 was rough when I was there. I was only there 5 years. So Villeneuve gets killed. I knew him quite well. We both lived in Monaco at the time. Paletti got killed in Montreal. I didn't know him at all. But his very first race, very first Grand Prix. Didier Pironi, his career ended trying to pass me in Germany. He just made a slight misjudgment of error and had a Villeneuve type accident trying to pass me in the rain. DeAngelis, one of my friends, one of the best guys I'd ever seen in a racing car, gets killed a couple of years after I finished in testing in Paul Ricard. Patrick Depailler, my era, drove for Tyrrell before I drove for Tyrrell. He gets killed testing. And then, when you come to IndyCar, I mean, there's some savage crashes in IndyCar. And if he didn't get killed, so many people got maimed. Like Rick Mears, one of the biggest names in the sport, doesn't make mistakes. And we're in next door hospital rooms in Indianapolis for months on end, and then in wheelchairs for months. And then, we still compare notes today, but my injuries were bad, but his are even worse than mine.
So leaving the clean sport for sure. Yeah. You came out of an era, and it's incredible that you live to tell the story now with us on the podcast. So we really appreciate it.
And so I guess, just without getting into too sensitive of a topic, but does this a fear, I guess, carry over watching your son?
No, I can't say it does. At no time did I ever think about he should stop, or no time did I ever think about you sure you want to do this? The only thing I told him when he started, look, I'll help you in every possible way I can, but I'm not going to pull you through the sport. You have to pull me, because I'm not going to live vicariously through you. This is too dangerous, too big a commitment, too expensive. But if you keep pulling me, I'll keep helping you. And the cars are so much safer nowadays.
Right.
I mean, he had an accident in Texas with himself and Joseph Newgarden. I doubt either of those drivers would have lived if it happened in the 80s.
Absolutely.
A similar accident. So they've done an amazing job on cars and racetracks now to just make them so much safer, so much better than they ever were before.
Wow.
Yeah, it's incredible. Mac, I don't have anything else. If
Good,
you
I can
go
go and
ahead.
have my dinner.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
We really appreciate your time. The stories have been fantastic. We do really appreciate your time, because I've been a fan of you since we met, and I knew you'd tell some great stories. So we really appreciate your time.
Good stuff. We'll do it again sometime.
Let's
you guys
have it.
keep going, build your audience, and we'll do it again sometime. We'll get Connor on sometime.
Oh,
Absolutely.
absolutely. We love
Yeah.
Connor. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you again.
Yeah,
All the
thank you
best.
so much.
Okay, guys. Thanks. Bye.
Thank
Alright.
you. Thank you so much.